research on our conventions of thriller film openings, we decided to get a better idea for suitable locations where we could film our thriller. So the research, as you can see below, was conducted by me and discusses the pros and cons by each one. So we have a car park here in Mayfair. I thought it was quite a good location. So the pros of it would be relatively easy to film in. It's quite modern, gothic look at the same time. It wouldn't cost any money to get in to film in there. Shows a quite good view over London from the top. It's quite an eerie atmosphere with the large clock tower there. It's quite a gothic setting, which would add to the thriller vibe. It's quite a good area for shooting, so inside the train station you can see the antagonist running off into the tube. The cons of it would be quite a large volume of people would hinder the quality of the film, so too many people in the shot. Quite a large area, so audience may drift and their attention might drift in other places in the shot, and the scenes would be quite hard to film due to how central the setting is. So Highgate West, Highgate Cemetery, so we said the pros of this would be it's quite eerie, as you can see in the background. Even at daytime it's quite spooky. It's quite a good setting, so it highlights general tension, and it's quite a large area to film over. Costs money to get in there, however, it could be classed as disrespectful. Last but not least, we have the Barbican Estate. So pros of this would be urbanised feel to the film, that also highlights the thriller genre. Large area of space to work with, quite a good sense of realism. Variety of camera shots can be used from different levels, on the floor, crane shot, etc. Relatively rough increases tension of the film, the surrounding area. The cons of it would be quite dull, could increase the boredom of the clip.
Can you think of a way of solving the problem of the crowds at King's Cross so that you could get a shot that looked good but wasn't too crowded? Is there a way around it?
At night time, if we went late enough, there wouldn't be that many people around, and there'd still be people walking around, but it would be minimal, and it'd still make the clip look fairly realistic.
Opening, and as a group we have discussed what kind of shots we will use and what locations. And to start with, we would like to use some establishing shots of Oxford Circus to kind of get a feel for the area and where, like, what goes on in that area. We will use 4 characters. One of them will be Sydney, and it will start off with Sydney getting off a bus on Oxford Street with a briefcase, and this whole story revolves around this briefcase, and it's a bit of a mystery because no one knows what's in the briefcase. Then Sydney will pass this briefcase to Dan, and we will do some close-up shots of their hands and the action of the briefcase being passed on to each other. We'll do some long and wide shots and some continuity editing of Dan walking around Oxford Street, kind of getting a feel for all the different vibes and all the different peoples and areas that goes on. Then we will do some cutaway editing of Will, which is another character that will be introduced, and he will be on a computer tracking the briefcase as he wants to find the briefcase as well. Then we will do some close-ups of Dan wearing a watch, checking the time as he has places to get to with this briefcase. And then Will will find where the briefcase is, he will locate it, and he will then be walking it down Oxford Street, and then we will do some continuity editing with that. We will then do some cutaway editing between Dan and Will and the different positions where they are walking. Then as Dan will then enter a car park, as in a long shot, and will follow Dan across the car park. There'll be then a reverse shot, and a 2-shot, and as they meet and as they see each other face to face. Then as the chase starts, we thought of an idea to use a handheld camera to make sure the audience can really engage into the chase. And then maybe as an extra, as they are chasing each other, they could chase each other downstairs, and we could maybe do an aerial shot for an extra effect. Then as Dan gets back onto the street and gets away from Will again, then we thought of idea as shallow focus, so Will would be in focus as Dan runs away with the briefcase. We would then introduce some intense music to get the audience more involved and more excited. We will then follow Dan to King's Cross Station, the area outside King's Cross Station, and we will break the 180-degree rule as he arrives there, holding the briefcase, looking very confused. And then we will see in the last quarter of the 180, breaking the 180-degree rule, we will then see Will running towards him as he then tackles him to try and get the briefcase off him. And then the briefcase will be thrown across the pavement towards myself, where we will then do a low angle shot, so the camera will be sitting on the floor as a unique effect as the briefcase is thrown across the pavement. And then I will pick up the briefcase and walk calmly into the crowded station. And as I walk into the crowded station, we'll keep zooming out to introduce more of the surroundings around me. So to sum up, the locations we'll be using are Oxford Circus, a car park outside King's Cross Station, and maybe the Barbican Estate for some extra effects.
A lot of action in there for a 2-minute opening. Do you think, are you sure that the plot lines, the narrative, won't be too much for 2 minutes of the opening of a film, of a fiction film? I'm not saying it is, but how can you be sure?
I think it all depends on how long we make each shot. And I think that small shots, I think that I described every little shot in detail. And I think that the small shots, like the beginning shot of Sydney getting off the bus, will be very short. I don't think every shot will be that long, but I just described every single shot in a lot of detail.
To your question, it kind of fits the typical action thriller conventions of a very fast-paced opening, and then it slows down and you find like the actual story behind what you've just seen in the opening throughout the film. But in a lot of action thrillers, which is the subgenre we're focusing on, it's very fast-paced and action.
In the scene where you said that Dan will be in shallow focus, you said that tense music will be introduced. Is this the only time that you will be using music throughout the opening?
No, that's just the only time that we've discussed to mention it. But I assume that during the beginning of the film, because then we will also add some dialogue, we haven't completely discussed every single angle of the film, but we will also add some dialogue, and in some sections, like at the beginning, to introduce the film with the establishing shots, we will also have some intense music. I think and with the chase as well, like when it suits the atmosphere, we will then add the music.
On the board is the initial film schedule for when we begin to film our opening. It consists of props, costume, the cast and filmmakers, and a plan of the day. So there's a costume we've already decided, because it's an action thriller, we've decided that the costume needs to be smart and formal, which is similar to what we have to wear every day, so it shouldn't be too hard to get this organised. And the cast and filmmakers consist of people who are already working in our group. And the props, we don't need that many props because we're basing it all around the briefcase, so it's not going to be too hard to like drag things all the way into central London and take them back, so we've kept it minimal to avoid hassle. And so the plan of the day is that after lunch we want to leave school and go into central London at 1:15 and hopefully finish by 5 p.m. at the latest to come back to school. So we'll go from Highbury and Islington and travel to Oxford Circus Station, as this is where the first part of our film takes place. We'll be filming myself coming off a bus and handing the briefcase to Dan, who will then be walking down Oxford Street. We'll begin filming by following the order of the storyboard, which is why I chose to put Oxford Circus first. And then between 3 p.m. and 4 p.m. we'll travel to Mayfair in order to film the chase scene in the car park, as this is in between the start of the opening and the finishing of the opening, so it's going in chronological order. Once we've done the chase scene, which will take us from Bond Street to Mayfair, we will travel to King's Cross from Bond Street Station and film the final scene of Selina collecting the briefcase and Will encountering Dan. So the plan of the day will go in order of where we are. So we'll go the closest to the furthest and then come back to school and finish by 5 p.m. and bring the props back. Within the day, we'll allow small breaks in between for the toilets or food and drink.
How have you planned to deal with the crowds in central London, and what about filming people that might not want to be on film?
This could be an issue with the crowds, especially this is why it's only an initial film schedule, because if it doesn't go to plan, we can change it and make a more precise film schedule. This is just a brief one which we can use for our first time filming, but if necessary we can go again. If things go wrong, like crowds or people not wanting to be filmed, then we can do it again. And also in terms of people being filmed, if they're not happy with it, like there's a lot of pictures and videos taken in central London anyway, and there's such a big crowd that I don't think it will be too much of an issue, because people don't really focus on what's being filmed and what's being photographed. If it's not to do directly with them, I think it will be quite clear that we're filming certain people and not directing it on individuals that aren't involved.
What will you do if filming doesn't all take place on one day and you have to film extra on another day?
Well, because it's initial film schedule, again, we can use this in other days. Like if we have to go to another area, the props will probably remain the same, the costume and the cast and film. Maybe some adjustments to the plan of the day, but we can still apply this to another day if we have to go filming again. And that may happen, but we hope to get the bulk of it done following this.